All right, so today we're diving deep into a fantastic poem by Robert Browning called The Bishop Orders His Tomb at St. Praxed's Church. Now, this is a dramatic monologue, which means we get to be a fly on the wall listening to one character spill their guts. And let me tell you, this character, a dying Renaissance bishop, has a whole lot to spill. His last words aren't about God or heaven. Oh no, they're about settling a score with his biggest rival.
Browning kicks the whole thing off with this absolute powerhouse of a quote from the Bible. From the book of Ecclesiastes? This is basically a giant flashing neon sign pointing right at the poem's main idea, the total emptiness of worldly things. This one line just perfectly sets the stage for the dark, twisted confession we're about to hear.
So you'd think a man of the cloth on his deathbed would be thinking about his soul, right? Making peace with God? Well, that's the big question here. Because as we're going to see, this bishop's final, passionate plea isn't aimed at God at all. It's aimed at something way more earthly and, honestly, way more corrupt.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in 16th century Rome. A very powerful bishop is lying on his deathbed. But what we're about to witness is not some holy, pious confession. No way. This is the last desperate act of a man who, you could say, lived for all the wrong reasons.
And right away, the whole holy man act just starts to fall apart. See, he gathers these young men around his bed, and he calls them his nephews. But, yeah, they're not. They're his sons. So boom, right off the bat, we know this guy's been living a lie, breaking his vow of celibacy, and hiding his own kids in plain sight. This isn't a loving family gathering. They're here for the inheritance. So, what's this big final will and testament all about? Is he trying to secure his spot in heaven? Not a chance. It's all about his one, all-consuming obsession, the design for his tomb. This is where his soul really is. Not with God, but locked away in a blueprint of stone and marble. And listen, he isn't just asking for a simple cross. He is demanding a tomb built with materials that would make a king jealous. The way he talks about this peach blossom marble, calling it ripe and flawless, it's like a wine expert describing the perfect vintage. This isn't about being remembered. It's a flex. It's about proving he had the best taste and, of course, the deepest pockets. And here's where you can really see how twisted his values have become. He's describing this blue lapis lazuli stone, right? And he compares its color to a vein on the Virgin Mary's breast. I mean, wow. It's such a sensual, physical, and honestly almost blasphemous thing to say. He's taking the most sacred figures of his own faith and turning them into, like, a color swatch for his tomb.
And the design itself is just a wild mashup. He wants Christian saints carved right next to pagan figures, like Pan, the goat god, chasing after a nymph. It's this total mix of the sacred and the, well, not so sacred. And this really captures the whole Renaissance mindset, doesn't it? Torn between your official Christian faith and this obsession with beautiful, worldly, classical art. So you have to be asking yourself, why? Why this ridiculously over-the-top monument? Is it all for the glory of God? Nope, not even a little bit. The real reason is actually kind of pathetic. It all comes down to a bitter, lifelong grudge. You can really think of this tomb as his final weapon. It's one last posthumous shot at his old enemy, a guy named Gandalf, who happens to be buried in the exact same church. Literally every single piece of expensive marble, every intricate carving, is chosen for one reason and one reason only, to make Gandalf's ghost burn with envy for all eternity.
I mean, just look at the comparison he makes. For his tomb, it has to be the absolute best, the purest marble, the most elegant classical Latin. But when he talks about Gandalf's tomb, oh, that's just cheap onion stone and second-rate Latin. This has nothing to do with piety. It is pure 100% snobbery. And there it is, the real motivation laid bare. It's so incredibly childish when you think about it. His final wish on this earth is not to seek God, but to imagine his dead rival's ghost just exploding with rage and jealousy, forever. For a man supposedly about to meet his maker, that's a pretty wild thing to be focused on. Now, the bishop isn't stupid. He's a realist. And he knows his sons might not be, let's say, as committed to this glorious vision as he is. So his dying plea, it just morphs into a negotiation, a desperate and pretty sleazy bargain to buy himself a legacy. He doesn't appeal to their love or their sense of duty or their faith. Nope. He goes straight for their wallets. He's not really talking to them like sons. He's treating them like contractors he's hiring for a big job. It just shows you that for this guy, everything, even family, is just a transaction. And the stuff he offers them as payment, it's like a catalog of his own worldly sins. We're talking villas, expensive horses, rare manuscripts, and then, get this, he even promises to pray that they get beautiful mistresses. And just listen to how he describes them. Great, smooth, marbly limbs. He talks about women the exact same way he talks about a slab of stone. It's crystal clear. To him, everything and everyone is just an object to be owned. But then, as he's lying there, bargaining and designing, something starts to shift. He starts to realize something truly terrible. He's losing his grip. His grand vision, his one shot at eternal victory, it's all starting to crumble, right before his very eyes. And this is the exact moment the panic kicks in. He sees his sons whispering to each other, their attention drifting away. You can just tell they're already thinking about the inheritance, not his instructions. And for a man who's been powerful and in control his entire life, that feeling of his authority just evaporating, it's absolutely terrifying for him. And that fear just snowballs into full-blown paranoia. He starts imagining the worst possible betrayal, that his sons are going to cheap out on him, that they'll use shoddy stone, that his magnificent, glorious tomb will end up looking like a cheap knockoff, a monument not to his glory, but to their greed. So what's his ultimate nightmare? It's not hellfire. It's not eternal damnation. No, his ultimate horror is this image. The thought of Gandalf laughing from his own tomb for all of eternity at the bishop's cheap, moldy replacement. That, for him, is eternal torment, being mocked by his rival forever. And so his final words, they aren't a prayer, they're a curse. He just lashes out, accusing his sons of wanting him dead, of stabbing him with their ingratitude. His entire life, built on vanity and rivalry and hypocrisy, it doesn't end with peaceful acceptance. It ends with this powerless, desperate rage. He's lost control of his legacy, and it completely breaks him. In the end, what is the bishop left with? Pretty much nothing. His faith was just a performance, his family was a business arrangement, and his incredible tomb was just an unrealized dream. And it leaves us with this question that goes way beyond 16th century Rome, doesn't it? When it's all said and done, what are we really building? What is the legacy we leave behind, and what is its true worth?
Let's dive into one of the greatest dramatic monologues ever written, Robert Browning's poem about a dying Renaissance bishop. Now, you'd expect a deathbed confession to be about sin, right? Well, this one is about something else entirely. It's a man's last, desperate shot at earthly glory, even if it costs him his soul. So picture this. It's the 16th century. We're in Rome, at St. Praxed's Church. A powerful bishop is on his deathbed, and gathered around him are the men he calls his nephews. You can just feel the tension in the room, right? So what do you think a man of God, in his final moments, is going to ask for? You'd assume it's something spiritual, wouldn't you? A final prayer, maybe? Absolution? He's about to meet his maker, after all.
But nope, that is not what happens. Instead of worrying about his soul, the bishop launches into this incredibly detailed, obsessive, and wildly expensive plan for his own tomb. His mind isn't on the afterlife, it's on the stone and marble he's leaving behind in this one. He kicks things off by quoting the Bible about how vanity is pointless, and then immediately dives headfirst into his own incredibly vain project. And did you catch that little slip? Nephew's, son's mine? Right from the very beginning, you can feel his control, his mind, and all his little secrets starting to fray at the edges.
And this really gets us to the heart of the poem. It's this epic battle between spiritual duty and raw material desire. And it's a battle our bishop has already very clearly lost.
I mean, just look at this contrast. On one side, you have everything a bishop should be focused on, salvation, God's judgment. But then you look at what our bishop is obsessed with, precious stones, making his rival jealous, and making sure the Latin grammar on his tombstone is absolutely perfect. He's totally swapped out spiritual value for stuff he can buy and show off. And the crown jewel of his collection, this one giant piece of lapis lazuli, a stone that was even rarer than gold back then. He's been hiding it his whole life, and he describes, almost like he's praying, how he wants this blue lump put right between his knees for all eternity. That stone, that's his real God.
But this isn't just about showing off his wealth. Oh no, the actual design of the tomb peels back the layers on a mind just filled with jealousy, bizarre pagan fantasies, and this deep, simmering hatred for his rival.
Let me introduce you to Old Gandalf. He was the bishop's enemy for life, and our bishop is still absolutely steaming mad that Gandalf managed to snag a better burial spot in the church. He calls Gandalf's tomb cheap and tacky. So the whole point of his own magnificent tomb, it's not about glorifying God, it's about making Gandalf's ghost jealous forever. Now, to really get what he's planning, you need to understand this idea, the grotesque. It's all about mashing together things that just don't belong, creating something that's both captivating and, well, kind of disturbing. Think of the gargoyles you see on an old cathedral. That's the idea. And here is a perfect example from his tomb design. He wants a carving of Jesus giving the Sermon on the Mount, right next to Pan, the lustful goat god from Greek mythology, who's in the middle of chasing a nymph. For this bishop, there's literally no difference between the sacred and the profane. It's all just decoration for his big finale. But here's the thing. All of this detailed planning, all the begging and threatening, it's all for nothing. And the reason why is sitting right there in the room with him, gathered around his bed.
So who are these nephews he keeps talking to anyway? Why are they the ones he's trusting with this sacred mission to build his monument?
Well, here's the tragic irony. They're almost certainly his illegitimate sons from a secret affair. His whole relationship with them is just a transaction. He's trying to bribe them with his villas and his horses, but he can see them, they're fidgeting, they're glancing at each other. They're just waiting for him to die so they can grab his treasures and give him the cheapest burial money can buy. His entire legacy is in the hands of people who couldn't care less.
Now, literary critics have been picking this poem apart for over a century, and they've given us some really interesting ways to understand the bishop's corrupted soul. Let's take a quick look at how these different perspectives can help us dig a little deeper.
Okay, so check this out. From a historical point of view, the poem is the Renaissance in a nutshell, this perfect mix of Christian beliefs and classical pagan imagery. If you look at it through an economic or Marxist lens, you see how the bishop turns everything into a commodity, even his own salvation. A psychological reading, it screams narcissism and a total denial of death. I mean, he talks like he's actually going to be around to enjoy his own tomb. And finally, if you just focus on his language, you see his authority completely collapsing as his speech gets more and more jumbled and his big plans just fall apart. So, we've got this dying, narcissistic bishop. His sons are about to betray him, and his grand masterpiece is completely doomed. So what's left? What is his real legacy?
Let's be clear. In the world of the poem, his sons are absolutely going to take his money and bury him in some cheap, forgotten grave. The magnificent monument he designed with such loving detail was never, ever built. All his material ambitions were a total bust.
And here it is, the final, beautiful irony. While that tomb of stone and bronze never came to be, Robert Browning, with this very poem, built the bishop a monument of words that has lasted for centuries. We remember him not for being a good bishop, not for his wealth, but for the spectacular, unforgettable failure of his soul. In the end, the poem isn't really a monument to one corrupt guy, is it? It's a monument to something much bigger, that terrifying, very human fear of just being forgotten. The desperate and sometimes really misguided things we all do to leave some kind of mark on the world. It really makes you ask yourself, what are the monuments we're trying to build in our own lives, and will they actually last?